We're officially into the month of March, and today I'm going to give you a list of seeds you can start indoors regardless of your zone. If you're watching this series, then you already know that the zone doesn't matter. All that matters is that you are cold right now and it is frozen outdoors. There's a number of different reasons for this, but please trust me, you'll thank me later. We're about to take all the guesswork out of everything. Remember, zones don't matter, your last frost date does. Let's start off with those herbs. We can start sage, rosemary, lavender. We're getting a little bit close to the end time for that, but those are three that you can start right now. You can also start thyme a little bit earlier. The general rule to this is anything with a barky type stem or a firmer stem needs to be started here in March. Next up is the brassicae species. So we have cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprout, cabbage, all of which need to be started here in March. What I will say is that some of these plants can get very big very quick. Upon germination, you're going to realize how large these plants can get and how quickly they can get large. The other thing with these is that they do not do well if they become leggy. So you definitely need to have your lighting in check, nice and close as needed. Otherwise you will get kind of leggy, lanky seedlings that they just simply do not do well. One thing to keep in mind with all of these is that they like a cooler soil for germination. So avoid the heat mat with these. I know it expedites the process of germination. However, again, it yields to leggy seedlings, which does not perform well. These seedlings do not perform well once they go leggy, so do keep that in mind. Next up, we have our tomatoes. So this includes our cherries, our beefsteaks, our decoratives, our tomato paste, you name it, your tomatoes. Start them in March. You can start them in waves or you can start them all at the same time. They can benefit from a heat mat just to help with the germination process, but again, not necessary. And remember to follow all the rules we set out in that heat mat video. Now these do well being started in March. Around March 15th is when I start mine. You can start them into April. I just don't like to because I find that they transplant well. They transplant well when they're started in March. Done too early, I find they do poorly. And if they're done too late, I find they just take longer to yield or they have lower yields because they don't do as well with that really intense heat that we get here in Canada in those August months. So something to keep in mind there. March is the start date for those bad boys. Next up is fennel, leeks, and you're getting a little bit too late for onions, but you can still start onions. So these guys can be started indoors. Again, no heat mat needed for these guys. Just the lighting needs to be in check, although they can do okay with a little less light than that of tomatoes and peppers and things of that nature. Which leads me into my next one, which is peppers. In particular, the non-hot peppers or the mildly spicy peppers. So things like jalapenos can be started now. However, if you choose to start your peppers here in March, I highly advise you not to top them. They do best untopped when they're started this late in the year. The reason for that is because they don't have necessarily they don't have as much time to get the gears rolling. Now that doesn't mean you can't overwinter these peppers and then top them in the fall or later in the year when you go to restart them next year. But this year in particular, if you're starting them in March, allow them to grow as is and avoid topping them for this year. You'll still get a yield, I promise. If you top them, I cannot guarantee a yield only because we have a very short growing season in this northern climate. Next up is eggplant. If you're an eggplant person, eggplants are great to start now. This also will include okra, can be started at this time. I kind of lump these together because they need very similar conditions in my opinion when it comes to growing in the garden. Now both of these plants can benefit from that heat mat, but both of these plants most definitely need that intense heat, that intense light when it comes to germination and just keeping those seedlings alive and healthy. And lastly, we have celery. Yes, celery you can still start. Your plant may be a little bit smaller because you're not going to have as much of a root. However, you can start your celery and achieve a relatively good harvest. Lastly, we have the flowers you can start. So this includes alyssums, cosmos, echinacea, yarrow. All these can be started indoors. Calendula, there's so many that can be started indoors right now. These do best started under heat in most cases. However, again, you don't have to use the heat mat. It's just going to take a little bit longer to germinate. And of course, don't forget winter sowing. If you don't have light, you don't have heat mats, you don't have all the fancy equipment, winter sowing outdoors is going to be huge for you. And there are a number of plants on this list that can be winter sown. So something to definitely keep in mind. I want to thank you guys for watching and I will talk to you next time. Bye.